My name is Brooke Anderson, and at 34 years old, I never expected my 16-year-old daughter to save me from my own family. That warm July evening at my parents' 40th anniversary celebration should have been perfect. The country club glowed with golden light, champagne flowed, and smiles seemed genuine. But throughout dinner, I noticed Madison growing increasingly uncomfortable, her eyes darting between her grandparents and my ex-husband. When the anniversary cake appeared, she suddenly gripped my arm. "Mom," she whispered urgently, "we need to go. Now." I stared at her confused. "Why?" Her eyes hardened. "I will tell you in the car." If you're watching this video right now, please hit the like button and subscribe to support my channel. I would love to know where you're watching from. So drop your location in the comments below as I share how my daughter's instincts revealed a betrayal I never saw coming. My relationship with my parents, Richard and Diana Wallace, had always been complicated. Growing up in their affluent New England household meant high expectations and conditional approval. My father built a successful real estate development company from scratch, and my mother managed their social standing with military precision. Love came with achievements, and disappointments were remembered forever. I thought I had finally earned their respect when I married Nathan Pearson, the son of one of my father's business associates. My parents adored Nathan from the beginning, his business degree, his ambition, his charm at social functions. For 10 years, I believed we had a solid marriage, even as Nathan grew more controlling and distant. When I discovered Nathan's affair with his 25-year-old assistant Kayla last year, my world imploded. The divorce was bitter, leaving me struggling financially with 2 children, Madison, my perceptive, strong-willed 16-year-old, and Ethan, my sweet, sensitive 8-year-old son. I had to move from our spacious colonial home to a modest 3-bedroom apartment, take on freelance graphic design work alongside my part-time gallery job, and adjust to shared custody. To my surprise, my parents seemed supportive during the divorce. They called more often, sent gifts to the children, and invited us for Sunday dinners. I was grateful, believing they had finally chosen me over appearances. Only Madison remained skeptical. "They look at you differently now, Mom," she told me one evening. "Like you're some project they need to fix." I dismissed her concerns as teenage hypersensitivity. "They're trying to help, honey. It's their way of showing love." Madison just shrugged. But the tension between her and her grandparents grew over the months. She would decline dinner invitations, claiming homework or friend commitments. When forced to attend, she was polite but distant, observing more than participating. Ethan, however, blossomed under his grandparents' attention. They took him fishing, to baseball games, and bought him expensive gifts I couldn't afford. My father started talking about Ethan attending his alma mater someday. "The Wallace legacy continues," he would say, ruffling Ethan's hair while never quite meeting my eyes. When my parents announced their 40th anniversary celebration, I saw it as an opportunity for healing. A grand affair at the Oak Ridge Country Club with over 100 guests, family, friends, business associates, all gathering to celebrate their enduring marriage. I spent weeks preparing. I couldn't afford a new dress, so I altered one from before the divorce. I helped my mother with invitation lists and menu selections. I even created a commemorative photo album, carefully curating images from their 4 decades together. Madison watched my efforts with concern. "Why are you trying so hard, Mom? They never do this much for you." "Because that's what family does," I replied, believing my own words. "We show up for each other." The day of the party arrived with perfect June weather. I spent hours helping Madison get ready, persuading her to wear the emerald green dress my mother had purchased. "Just for a few hours," I promised. "It will make Grandma happy." When we arrived at the country club, my breath caught at the elegant transformation. White roses and lilies adorned every table. Crystal chandeliers sparkled above the dance floor. A string quartet played softly in the corner. My parents stood at the entrance, my father distinguished in his tuxedo, my mother radiant in silver beaded gown, greeting guests like visiting royalty. Brooke, darling, my mother air-kissed my cheeks. You look comfortable. And Madison, don't you look lovely in that dress? I knew that color would bring out your eyes. My father barely glanced at me before scooping Ethan into his arms. There's my boy. I've got a special seat for you right next to Grandpa at the head table. I felt the first twinge of unease, but pushed it aside. This was their day, after all. The hall filled quickly with familiar and unfamiliar faces. Distant relatives, business partners, country club friends. I circulated, playing the role of dutiful daughter, accepting condolences about my divorce with practiced grace. Yes, it's been challenging, but we're adjusting. The children are resilient. No, I'm not dating yet. Everything seemed to be going smoothly until I spotted them at the entrance. Nathan, looking prosperous in a tailored suit, with Kayla on his arm. Her blonde hair cascading over a designer dress I could never afford. My stomach clenched. Did you know they were coming? I whispered to my sister-in-law Rachel. She looked uncomfortable. I assumed you knew. Your mother sent them a personal invitation. Before I could process this information, my parents were greeting Nathan and Kayla with enthusiastic hugs. My father clapped Nathan on the back like a long-lost son while my mother admired Kayla's dress. I stood frozen, watching this warm reunion with the man who had betrayed me and the woman who had helped him do it. When I finally caught my mother's eye, she gave a small shrug. Bygones, darling. Nathan's practically family. We couldn't exclude him from such an important celebration. As I retreated to the bar for a much-needed glass of wine, I noticed Madison standing in the corner, watching everything with narrowed eyes and texting rapidly on her phone. I should have paid more attention to who she was messaging and why. I should have recognized the first warning signs. Instead, I took another sip of wine and told myself to get through the evening with dignity. The Oak Ridge Ballroom hummed with conversation and laughter as the celebration hit full stride. Crystal glasses clinked, servers glided between groups with trays of hors d'oeuvres, and the photographer captured carefully orchestrated moments of happiness. I maintained my smile despite the growing discomfort of watching Nathan and Kayla move through the crowd, accepting congratulations on their recent engagement. You're handling this so well, my cousin Melissa whispered, squeezing my arm. I would have thrown my drink in her face by now. I'm trying to be mature for the kids, I replied, scanning the room for Madison and Ethan. My son was easy to spot, proudly attached to my father's side as they greeted important business associates. My father's hand rested possessively on Ethan's shoulder as he introduced him to everyone as the future of Wallace Enterprises. Madison was harder to locate. I finally spotted her in a quiet corner, engaged in what appeared to be an intense conversation with my mother's sister, Aunt Linda. Madison's posture was rigid, her expression serious as she listened to Linda, who kept glancing nervously around the room. When they noticed me approaching, the conversation abruptly ceased. Everything okay over here? I asked lightly. Just catching up with my grandniece, Linda replied with forced brightness. She's become such an observant young woman. Madison's eyes met mine briefly. We were discussing family history, she said flatly. Before I could probe further, the chiming of a glass announced the first toast. My father stood at the center of the room, commanding attention as he always did. Diana and I are overwhelmed by your presence here tonight, he began, raising his glass toward my mother. 40 years ago, I made the best business decision of my life. Polite laughter rippled through the crowd. Marriage is about building something lasting together, he continued. About making difficult decisions for the greater good of the family. Sometimes that means prioritizing the future over temporary discomforts. His eyes drifted to Nathan, then to Ethan, then briefly to me with an expression I couldn't quite decipher. Today, we're not just celebrating the past. We're securing the future. To family legacy and wise investments. The guests enthusiastically raised their glasses, though a few exchanged confused glances at the unusual anniversary toast. As dinner progressed, I attempted to enjoy the excellent meal despite my growing unease. Madison had barely touched her food and kept checking her phone under the table. Ethan, meanwhile, had been moved to sit between my father and Nathan, who were engaged in animated conversation that hushed whenever I approached. During the dessert course, I excused myself to the restroom and nearly collided with Aunt Linda in the hallway. "Oh, Brooke," she startled. "I've been meaning to find you alone. Is everything all right? You seemed intense with Madison earlier." Linda glanced around before speaking in a low voice. "I'm concerned about some conversations I've overheard. Your father and Nathan have been discussing financial arrangements that seem unusual." "What kind of arrangements?" "Something about transferring property to secure against liabilities. They mentioned your name and words like irresponsible and unpredictable." Linda squeezed my hand. "I know Richard can be controlling, but this feels different. Just be careful." Before I could press for details, my mother appeared at the end of the hallway. "There you are, Linda. The photographer wants the sisters' photo now." With an apologetic glance, Linda hurried away, leaving me with a growing sense of dread. When I returned to the table, Madison was gone. Ethan was now sitting on Nathan's lap, looking at something on Nathan's phone, both laughing. My mother stood nearby, beaming at them with approval I rarely received myself. "Where's Madison?" I asked, scanning the room. "That girl," my mother sighed. "So moody lately." She said something about checking the terrace. I found Madison outside, her back to the party, speaking intently on her phone. "Yes, that's exactly what the document said. I need to know if that's even legal." She noticed me and quickly ended the call. "Mom, how's the party? Who were you talking to?" "Just a friend." She tucked her phone away. "Have you noticed how much time Grandpa is spending with Nathan?" "It's probably just business talk," I said, though doubt colored my words. Madison studied my face. "Mom, have you ever wondered why Grandpa keeps all those family documents in his home office? The property deeds, the trust paperwork." "What are you talking about? How would you know what's in Dad's office?" She hesitated. "The last time we visited, I needed a quiet place to study. Grandma said to use Grandpa's office since he was golfing." Her eyes held mine. "I saw papers on his desk with your name and Nathan's. There were red flags all over the place. Literally, red sticky flags marking sections about asset transfers and custody." A chill ran through me despite the warm evening. "Madison, those are private business documents you shouldn't have been looking at. Even if they're about you?" "About us." She looked frustrated. "Why aren't you more concerned?" Before I could respond, the doors to the terrace opened as servers prepared for the cake cutting. Madison gave me a long look. "Just watch them carefully, okay? Especially how they interact with Nathan." Throughout the next hour, I found myself doing exactly that, observing interactions I might otherwise have missed. My father's hand on Nathan's shoulder, guiding him to meet specific business associates. My mother showing Kayla family jewelry that had once been promised to me. Nathan's familiar comfort in my parents' inner circle, as though the divorce had never happened. Most disturbing was how they positioned Ethan between them in photos, my father, Nathan, and my son, while excluding me. A visual representation of what suddenly felt like their actual perception of family structure. The slideshow presentation began, projected on a large screen. 40 years of love and legacy. Read the title slide in elegant script. As images of my parents' life together flashed by, I noticed a pattern. My brother Brian and his wife appeared frequently. Nathan was in numerous recent family photos. Ethan featured prominently. But images of me were sparse, and Madison appeared in only 2 group shots. It was as though they were visually erasing us from the family narrative while incorporating Nathan more deeply. When I glanced at Madison, she was watching me intently, gauging my reaction. She had noticed long before I had. As the presentation concluded to applause, my father took the microphone again. "Before we cut the cake, Diana and I have an exciting announcement." He gestured for Nathan and Ethan to join him. Family continuity has always been our greatest concern. Today, we're taking steps to ensure Wallace traditions and properties remain in capable hands for generations to come. I felt Madison's hand slip into mine, squeezing tightly. In the coming weeks, We'll be finalizing arrangements that will secure our family legacy through proper channels. My father's eyes briefly met mine with something like pity before returning to the crowd. Sometimes the most loving choice is making difficult decisions for those who may not understand what's best. A murmur ran through the crowd as Madison suddenly stood. I need to check something, she whispered, slipping away before I could stop her. For 20 minutes, I sat in growing anxiety, mechanically accepting congratulations from guests who stopped by my table. When Madison finally returned, her face was pale, her expression determined. She leaned close to my ear, her voice urgent. Mom, we need to leave. Now. We can't just leave, I whispered back, conscious of the nearby guests. This is my parents' anniversary. Ethan is enjoying himself. Madison's eyes flashed with unusual intensity. Mom, trust me. We need to go. Did something happen? Are you feeling sick? I'll explain everything, but not here. She glanced nervously toward my father's business partner, Gerald, who was watching our exchange with interest. Please, Mom. For once. Just trust me without questioning everything. The desperation in her voice gave me pause. Madison had always been sensitive and perceptive, but never dramatic or attention-seeking. If she was this insistent, perhaps I needed to listen. Let me at least say proper goodbyes and collect Ethan. Make it quick, Madison urged. And don't let Grandpa talk you into staying. I made my way to where Ethan was playing with his cousins, conscious of the curious glances following me. My mother intercepted me before I reached him. Leaving so soon? Her perfectly lined lips curved into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. The evening is just getting interesting, darling. Madison isn't feeling well, I lied. I should get her home. Send her with your brother. Brian can drop her off. You and Ethan should stay for the important announcements. I felt a chill at her insistence. What announcements? Just some family business matters. Nothing for you to worry about. She patted my arm condescendingly. Your father has everything under control. That's what concerns me, I replied, moving past her to collect Ethan, who protested leaving the party early. But Grandpa said he has a special surprise for me later, he complained. We'll come back another day for the surprise, I promised, avoiding my father's questioning gaze from across the room. Nathan appeared suddenly, blocking our path to the exit. Taking off? The night's still young, Brooke. His familiar cologne brought back unwelcome memories. Your father was hoping to discuss some arrangements regarding Ethan's education fund. Another time, I said firmly, noticing how he specifically mentioned Ethan but not Madison. Don't be difficult, he lowered his voice. This is important. Your parents are trying to help secure Ethan's future since you're clearly struggling financially. His eyes traveled dismissively over my altered dress. Madison stepped between us. We're leaving now, she stated with unexpected authority. Ethan, take Mom's hand. As we made our hasty exit, I caught fragments of conversation from a group of my father's lawyers near the door. Transfer of deed should be straightforward once the custody modification. Wallace keeping it in the family, just not through the daughter. Nathan's name on the trust by month's end. My father caught up to us at the entrance, his expression a practiced mix of concern and disappointment. Brooke, this is highly inappropriate. We have guests' announcements to make. I'm sorry, Dad, but Madison isn't feeling well. He barely glanced at her. Then leave her with the staff. You and Ethan need to be present for the family business portion of the evening. The possessive way he emphasized family business while excluding Madison sent warning signals I couldn't ignore. For perhaps the first time in my life, I didn't yield to his authority. Whatever it is can wait for another day. We're leaving. His expression hardened. This is exactly the irresponsible behavior that concerns us. Nathan would never put personal feelings above family obligations. Nathan put his personal feelings into his assistant. I replied sharply. Yet somehow he's still the golden child. My father leaned close, his voice low enough that Ethan couldn't hear. We're trying to protect family assets from your emotional decisions. If you'd stop being difficult and accept the arrangement, this could be painless. What arrangement? I demanded. He straightened, composing his features as another guest approached. We'll discuss this when you're being more reasonable. Nathan and I have plans that benefit everyone, especially Ethan. Madison tugged at my sleeve. Mom, now. Please. Looking into my daughter's eyes, I saw fear mixed with determination. Whatever she had discovered had truly frightened her, and that decided me. I nodded, turned away from my father without another word, and guided my children through the ornate doors of the country club into the warm summer night. As we walked to the car, I felt a strange mixture of dread and relief. Something was very wrong with my family, and I was finally ready to discover what it was. The interior of my Honda Accord felt like a confessional booth as we pulled out of the country club's circular driveway. Silence hung heavy between us, broken only by Ethan's occasional sighs from the back seat as he played with the party favor he'd collected. Madison sat rigidly beside me, her hands tightly clasped in her lap, staring straight ahead at the darkening road. Are you going to tell me what this is about? I finally asked, keeping my voice low to avoid alerting Ethan. Madison glanced back at her brother. Not yet. He doesn't need to hear this. I nodded, respecting her judgment. We drove in tense silence for 15 minutes until Ethan's head began to nod, his exhaustion from the excitement of the party finally catching up with him. Once his soft snores filled the back seat, Madison straightened. Pull over somewhere, she said. I need to show you things on my phone. I found a quiet shopping center parking lot, now empty in the late evening hours, and turned off the engine. The overhead light illuminated Madison's face as she unlocked her phone. I've suspected something was wrong for months, she began, her voice barely above a whisper. The way Grandpa and Grandma talk about you when you're not around. How they've been cultivating Ethan and excluding me. But I thought maybe I was just being paranoid until today. She opened her text messages. First, I need to tell you who I've been talking to. It's Aunt Samantha. The name hit me like a physical blow. Samantha was my father's youngest sister who had been effectively excommunicated from the family 15 years ago after a bitter dispute over her inheritance. My father had always told us she was unstable and money-hungry. We hadn't spoken to her in years. How did you even contact her? I found her on Instagram 3 months ago. I reached out because... Madison hesitated. Because the way Grandpa treats you reminded me of stories I've heard about how he treated her. She passed me her phone, showing a lengthy text exchange. She's been warning me that Grandpa and Grandma might try to manipulate the family again. She said to watch for signs like them getting overly involved with custody arrangements or showing unusual interest in your finances or property. I scrolled through the messages, my heart sinking as I read Samantha's warnings and Madison's increasingly concerned responses. That's why I've been paying such close attention. But today confirmed everything. Madison's voice trembled slightly. When I disappeared during the party, I went to Grandpa's office in the country club. He keeps a briefcase there. I heard Nathan and him discussing documents earlier, and I wanted to see what they were. Madison, you can't just go through private papers. Even as I protested, I felt a flicker of pride at her resourcefulness. Mom, they're planning to take everything from you. Her eyes welled with tears. When I was looking for the bathroom, I overheard Grandpa and Nathan in the study. They were laughing about how you'd never see it coming. That's when I decided to investigate. She took her phone back and opened her photos. I took pictures of everything I found. What I saw made my blood run cold. Legal documents with my name, Nathan's name, and my parents as co-signatories. Property transfer forms for my childhood home, the Victorian house my parents had always promised would come to me, their only daughter. Custody modification petitions with notes in my father's handwriting about Ethan's proper upbringing in the family tradition. There's more, Madison said quietly. When I went back to the party, I recorded some conversations on my phone. I kept it in my pocket with the microphone exposed. She played a recording. My father's voice came through clearly. Nathan understands what's needed to maintain the Wallace name. Brooke has always been too emotional, too independent. This divorce actually gives us the opportunity we needed to restructure things properly. Nathan's voice responded, "I appreciate your trust, Richard. With the house transferred to me as Ethan's custodial parent, we can ensure the proper maintenance of family property and traditions. Brooke would just sell it to fund some artistic pursuit." My mother's voice joined in. "We've always worried about Brooke's judgment. Remember that inappropriate teacher she dated in college? Or the year she wanted to be a photographer? Thank goodness you've remained close with us, Nathan, despite the divorce. You're still the son we always wanted." Tears blurred my vision as the recording continued, revealing more of their plans. Contesting our divorce settlement to transfer more assets to Nathan, building a case for increased custody of Ethan based on my financial instability, and systematically excluding Madison, whom they considered too much like her mother, questioning everything. "They've been telling Ethan things too," Madison said softly. "Little comments when you're not around. Grandma told him that if he lived with Dad, he could go to special schools and have more opportunities. That you're holding him back." The betrayal cut so deep I could barely breathe. My own parents, conspiring with my ex-husband to take my son and my inheritance. Planning it at their anniversary celebration, using the event as cover for their schemes. "I couldn't let you stay there while they announced whatever they were planning," Madison explained. Aunt Samantha said Grandpa did something similar to her at a family event, blindsided her publicly so she couldn't react without seeming hysterical. I reached for Madison's hand, holding it tightly. "Thank you," I whispered, my voice breaking. "For paying attention when I couldn't see what was happening. For being brave enough to investigate. For getting us out of there." She squeezed back. "I was so afraid you wouldn't believe me. You always want to see the best in them. I believe you now." I started the car with shaking hands. "Let's go home and figure out what to do next." As we drove through the darkness toward our modest apartment, I realized two things with perfect clarity. My daughter had saved me from my own blind loyalty, and tomorrow would begin a battle I never expected to fight against my own family. Sleep eluded me that night. After tucking Ethan into bed, I spent hours at my kitchen table with Madison, reviewing the evidence she had gathered and searching for additional confirmation. Around midnight, she finally succumbed to exhaustion, collapsing on the couch with her phone still clutched in her hand. I covered her with a blanket, marveling at the strength and maturity she had shown. Alone with my thoughts, I opened my laptop and began my own investigation. First, I checked an old email account I had shared with Nathan during our marriage. He had never changed the password, assuming I no longer used it. There, in the drafts folder where he often stored notes to himself, I found messages outlining his discussions with my father. Richard agrees transfer of property should happen before school year. Custody modification to follow. Brooke distracted by gallery work, unlikely to notice legal notices. Another draft, dated just 3 days earlier. Anniversary party, perfect opportunity to announce arrangements. Diana concerned about Brooke's reaction, but Richard confident family pressure will force compliance. My hands trembled as I continued searching. In the sent folder, I discovered emails to our family attorney requesting information about modifying child support and custody agreements based on changes in living arrangements and financial circumstances. At 2 a.m., driven by a mixture of insomnia and determination, I did something I hadn't done in 15 years. I searched for Samantha Wallace online and found her contact information through her business website. Without allowing myself to hesitate, I sent her a text message. "Samantha, this is Brooke. Madison showed me everything. I need to talk to you about Dad." To my surprise, she responded almost immediately. "I've been waiting for this call for years. Are you somewhere safe to talk?" We spoke for over an hour. Samantha's story poured out, how our father had manipulated her out of her portion of our grandparents' estate, using a family celebration to publicly announce changes to trusts and property ownership that had already been legally executed without her knowledge. How he had turned family members against her by painting her as unstable and greedy when she objected. "History repeats itself," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Dad sees the family as a business and the children as assets to be managed. When I chose a career he didn't approve of and married someone outside his social circle, I became a liability to be managed out. Why didn't you ever tell me? I asked. I tried, Brooke. But you were in college idolizing Dad, planning your wedding to Nathan, his hand-picked son-in-law. You didn't want to hear it. The truth of her words stung. I had dismissed Samantha's warnings years ago, believing my father's version of events without question. I'm sorry, I whispered. I should have listened. What matters is that you're listening now, she replied, and that you have Madison. That girl is extraordinary, perceptive, brave, loyal. When she contacted me, I recognized myself at her age. Before Dad broke my spirit, before ending the call, Samantha offered practical advice and the name of her attorney. Document everything. Don't confront them alone. And whatever you do, don't sign anything. At dawn, I called my brother Brian, who lived across the country and had always maintained a careful distance from family drama. To my surprise, he confirmed much of what Madison and Samantha had revealed. I've heard Dad and Nathan discussing the property transfers, he admitted reluctantly. I didn't know how to tell you. Dad made it sound like it was for tax purposes, beneficial for everyone. Including me? I asked bitterly. His silence was answer enough. Why, Brian? Why would they do this? He sighed heavily. Dad never forgave you for pursuing art instead of business. Then when you started questioning Nathan's financial decisions during the divorce, well, in Dad's mind, you became a threat to the family wealth. Nathan promised to keep everything in the family bloodline through Ethan. And Madison? She's too independent. Too observant. Like you used to be before. He trailed off. Before I learned to stay quiet and go along with everything, I finished for him. I'm sorry, Brooke. I should have warned you. After feeding Ethan breakfast and sending him to play with the neighbor's son, I made the call I had been dreading. With Madison sitting beside me for moral support, I phoned my parents' house. My mother answered, her voice cool and controlled as always. Brooke, your behavior last night was completely unacceptable. Your father is extremely disappointed. Put Dad on the line too. I replied, I want to speak with both of you. A moment later, my father's authoritative voice joined the conversation. I hope you're calling to apologize for that embarrassing display. Actually, I'm calling about the documents you and Nathan have been preparing. The property transfers, custody modifications, and trust realignments. The momentary silence confirmed everything. Those are private family business matters, my father finally responded, his tone hardening. Matters that wouldn't concern you if you had shown better judgment in your personal life. They concern me directly since they involve my children and my inheritance. An inheritance is a privilege, not a right, my mother interjected. Your father earned everything we have. He has the wisdom to determine its proper distribution. By giving it to my ex-husband instead of me? By helping him take custody of my son. Don't be dramatic, my father dismissed. We're simply ensuring family assets remain protected and properly managed. Your financial decisions since the divorce have been concerning, to say the least. You mean my decision not to let Nathan control all our money? Or my refusal to give up my career to be a proper society wife? We've always supported your little hobby at the gallery. My mother said condescendingly. Nathan understands business, my father continued. He knows how to maintain family wealth and position. Ethan deserves the opportunities that come with proper management of those resources. And Madison? I challenged. What opportunities have you planned for her? Their telling silence spoke volumes. Madison is headstrong, my mother finally offered. Like Samantha was. Not particularly interested in family tradition. The casual dismissal of my daughter ignited something primal within me. Let me be perfectly clear, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I know everything about your plans. I have copies of the documents, recordings of your conversations with Nathan, and witnesses to your manipulation of Ethan. You're being hysterical, my father snapped. This is exactly why we needed to take measures. Your emotional instability. Is this how you justified what you did to Aunt Samantha too? I interrupted. The shocked silence that followed told me I had struck a nerve. I've spoken with Samantha, I continued. And Brian. I know this isn't the first time you've manipulated family members out of their inheritance or used public family events to force compliance. You've been speaking with Samantha? My mother's voice rose with indignation. That unstable, ungrateful. That's enough, I cut her off. I'm meeting with an attorney tomorrow. Any communication going forward should go through them. And tell Nathan the same. You're making a serious mistake, my father warned. We were trying to help you. No, Dad. You were trying to control me, like you've always done. But it stops now. I ended the call and sat in silence with Madison, whose eyes shone with a mixture of fear and pride. What happens now? She asked softly. I pulled her into a hug, drawing strength from her courage. Now we fight. Not just for our financial security, but for our freedom from their manipulation. As I held my daughter, I felt something shifting inside me, decades of seeking approval transforming into a resolve to protect what truly mattered, my children and my dignity. The next morning, I contacted Jennifer Reeves, the attorney Samantha had recommended. Unlike the family lawyers who had handled my divorce, men who played golf with my father and had known Nathan for years, Jennifer had no connections to the Wallace family. Her office was modest, but professional, her manner direct and unimpressed by family names or social standing. Your situation isn't unique, she told me after reviewing Madison's evidence and my additional findings. Wealthy patriarchs often use family trusts and property as control mechanisms. The good news is that your daughter's documentation gives us leverage. What about the custody threats? I asked, my greatest fear surfacing. Nathan has more financial resources, especially with my parents backing him. Money influences custody battles, but it's not the only factor. Courts prioritize the children's well-being and established relationships. Jennifer tapped Madison's recorded conversations. Their transparent discussion of using Ethan as a pawn in financial maneuvering works in our favor. She outlined a strategy that began with legal notifications preventing any property transfers without my consent, followed by formal documentation of the attempts to manipulate custody for financial gain. We'll also need to address your son, she advised gently. From what you've described, they've been conditioning him to prefer time with his father and grandparents through gifts and promises. Madison, who had insisted on attending the meeting, spoke up. Ethan's confused. He loves Mom, but Grandpa keeps telling him that living with Dad would mean private school and a bigger room. Jennifer nodded thoughtfully. Children are perceptive but vulnerable to manipulation. Family therapy might help him understand what's happening in age-appropriate terms. After establishing legal protections, I took the next difficult step, confronting Nathan directly. Following Jennifer's advice, I invited him to meet at a neutral coffee shop, recording the conversation with my phone visible on the table. This is unnecessary, he complained, glancing at the phone. We could discuss family matters privately. Family matters became legal matters when you conspired with my parents behind my back, I replied, maintaining the calm demeanor Jennifer had coached me to display. Initially, Nathan denied everything, claiming misunderstanding and exaggeration. But when I referenced specific documents and conversations Madison had photographed and recorded, his strategy shifted. Your parents approached me, he admitted, lowering his voice. They were concerned about your emotional state after the divorce, worried about the children's stability. And their solution was transferring my inheritance to you and modifying our custody arrangement? He had the grace to look uncomfortable. Richard believes family assets should remain under proper management. The house, the trust fund, these are Wallace family legacies. That I'm apparently unworthy to maintain because I divorced you after your affair. Nathan leaned forward, his familiar persuasive tone emerging. Be reasonable, Brooke. Your father is offering financial security for Ethan's future. All you need to do is cooperate with the new arrangements. And Madison? What does the arrangement offer her? His hesitation confirmed what I already knew. Madison is different, more independent. Richard thinks. That she's too much like me, I finished. Not controllable enough. Our conversation ended with Nathan realizing I wouldn't be manipulated. As he left, he delivered a final warning. Your parents have resources and influence you can't match. Don't turn this into a war you can't win. His words might have intimidated me once, but Madison's courage had awakened something dormant within me, a willingness to fight for what was rightfully ours. The next weeks unfolded in a careful strategy of legal maneuvers and emotional healing. Jennifer filed court documents protecting my parental rights and blocking any property transfers. I scheduled sessions with a family therapist specializing in parental manipulation, bringing both children to create a safe space for Ethan to express his confusion. Grandpa says Dad needs me more than you do, he confessed during one session, his 8-year-old face creased with worry. He says I'm the Wallace heir. You're my son first, I told him gently. And you don't have to carry adult worries or choose between people who love you. Madison thrived in this period of honesty, no longer carrying the burden of protecting me from painful truths. She maintained her communication with Samantha, who provided valuable insights into my father's previous manipulation tactics. The most unexpected support came from my estranged sister. After 15 years of separation engineered by my father, Samantha and I rebuilt our relationship through late-night phone calls and weekend visits. She had built a successful interior design business in Colorado, married a kind professor, and raised 2 children I barely knew. Dad uses the same playbook every time, she explained during her first visit to our apartment. Identify the family member who questions authority, label them as unstable or irresponsible, isolate them from allies. Then use a public family event to announce decisions already made in private. I can't believe I never saw the pattern, I admitted. Because he's careful to target only one person at a time. Everyone else stays in line, afraid they'll be next. She squeezed my hand. But he miscalculated with you. He didn't account for Madison. Indeed, Madison had become my strongest ally. While I navigated legal proceedings and emotional processing, she maintained detailed records of every interaction with my parents and Nathan, created a timeline of their manipulation attempts, and even helped Ethan understand the situation in terms he could grasp. Mom isn't taking you away from Dad or Grandpa, I overheard her explaining to her brother one evening. She's making sure everyone plays fair. Like when you and Jaden make rules for your video games so no one cheats. My brother Brian eventually chose sides as well, sending copies of emails and financial documents my father had shared with him, providing further evidence of the coordinated effort to disinherit me. He remained physically distant, unwilling to directly confront our parents, but his information proved invaluable. The most painful part of this period was accepting that my relationship with my parents might never recover. For all my life, I had sought their approval, adjusted my behavior to earn their love, and interpreted their control as concern. Now I saw clearly the conditional nature of their affection, available only when I complied with their vision for my life. 3 months after the anniversary party, we reached a turning point. Jennifer called with news that Nathan wanted to meet, without lawyers or parents involved. He's feeling the pressure, she explained. Your father's plans are stalled by our legal actions. And Nathan's new fiancée is apparently uncomfortable with the custody battle publicity. I agreed to meet him, again in a public place with Madison's support. This time, Nathan appeared without his usual confidence. This has gotten out of hand, he began. The lawyers, the court filings. It's affecting Ethan. It's affecting your wedding plans, you mean? Madison muttered, earning a sharp look from her father. I'm willing to withdraw my support from your father's property transfers, Nathan offered, and maintain our original custody arrangement. In return, I want you to drop the allegations of parental manipulation. I studied my ex-husband, the man I had once loved, the father of my children, now revealed as willing to use our son as leverage for financial gain. Why the change of heart? I asked. He glanced away. Kayla thinks the situation looks problematic. Her parents are concerned about the family dynamic they're marrying into. In other words, his new in-laws had standards his behavior wasn't meeting. "I'll consider it," I replied. "But I need everything in writing, and any agreement needs to include protection for both children's inheritance rights." As we negotiated terms, I realized something fundamental had shifted. For the first time, I was engaging with Nathan as an equal, not as the accommodating wife who had deferred to his financial decisions for a decade. Later that week, we scheduled a family therapy session with Ethan. With the therapist's guidance, Nathan and I explained that we had resolved our disagreements and would both continue being his parents, without him needing to choose sides or carry adult concerns. "Does this mean Grandpa won't be mad at Mom anymore?" Ethan asked, revealing how aware he had been of the underlying tensions. "Your grandparents and I have different opinions about some things," I explained carefully. "But none of that changes how much we all love you." It wasn't the whole truth, but it was what he needed at 8 years old. The full reckoning with my parents would come later. 6 months after my parents' anniversary party, we gathered in a conference room at Jennifer's law office. The tableau would have been unimaginable to me a year earlier, my parents seated stiffly on one side of the table, Nathan beside them but maintaining a careful distance, Samantha beside me offering silent support, and Madison sitting tall and composed at the head of the table, her evidence folders neatly arranged before her. Jennifer had orchestrated this meeting as the final step in resolving the family dispute. With Nathan having withdrawn from my parents' schemes and Brian providing additional documentation of their plans, we had assembled an indisputable case of attempted financial manipulation and parental alienation. "Before we begin," my father announced, his authoritative tone unchanged despite the circumstances, "I want to register my objection to Samantha's presence. This is a family matter." "Samantha is family," I replied simply. "And her experience with your financial manipulations is directly relevant to these proceedings." My mother dabbed at imaginary tears. "I don't understand how it came to this. We only wanted what was best for Ethan and the family legacy. By excluding Madison and taking my inheritance?" I challenged. "By poisoning my son against me?" "We never," my mother began. But Jennifer interrupted by placing Madison's recorded evidence on the table. "Perhaps we should review the documented conversations before continuing with denials," she suggested mildly. What followed was a methodical presentation of the case we had built, the secret meetings between my father and Nathan, the planned property transfers, the custody modification strategy, the disparagement of my parenting and financial competence, and most damning, the deliberate attempt to influence Ethan's preferences through promises of material advantages. My father's face grew increasingly rigid as Jennifer outlined the potential legal consequences, not just blocking of the property transfers, but possible civil claims for attempted parental alienation and breach of fiduciary duty in his role as trustee of family assets. "What exactly do you want?" he finally asked, his voice cold. Jennifer slid a document across the table. "Ms. Anderson's terms are straightforward. First, a legally binding agreement that all inherited family property designated for her in previous trust documents remains intact and under her sole control." My father began to object, but his own lawyer placed a restraining hand on his arm. "Second, a formal acknowledgement that both Madison and Ethan have equal standing as beneficiaries of any family trusts or future inheritances, with neutral third-party trustees replacing Mr. Wallace." My mother gasped at this effective removal of my father's control over family assets. Third, a structured communication plan for grandparent visitation that includes professional supervision until trust can be rebuilt. "This is outrageous," my father sputtered. "We don't need supervision to see our own grandchildren. The recordings of you deliberately undermining Ms. Anderson's relationship with her son suggest otherwise," Jennifer replied calmly. The negotiations continued for hours, with occasional heated exchanges and tense silences. By late afternoon, an agreement had been reached that protected my inheritance, established equal treatment for both my children, and created boundaries for my parents' involvement in our lives. As we prepared to leave, my father made one final attempt to assert control. I hope you're satisfied, Brooke. This vendetta has damaged relationships that may never recover. Madison, who had remained remarkably composed throughout the proceedings, finally spoke. Grandpa, with respect, you damaged those relationships when you decided Mom and I were disposable. We're just creating consequences for your choices. The simplicity and truth of her statement hung in the air as we departed, leaving my parents to contend with the aftermath of their failed manipulation. The months that followed brought significant changes to our lives. With my inheritance secured, I was able to purchase a small but comfortable house with room for both children. I expanded my work at the gallery from part-time to full management, finding financial stability and creative fulfillment I had suppressed during my marriage. Madison blossomed without the weight of family secrets, developing a close relationship with her Aunt Samantha and cousins she had barely known existed. Ethan gradually adjusted to our new family configuration, especially once the tension of the custody threats dissipated. My relationship with my parents entered a lengthy healing process. The structured visitation plan began with short, supervised interactions that slowly extended as they demonstrated respect for my parental authority. My father struggled most with the new boundaries, occasionally testing limits with gifts or promises to Ethan, but consistent consequences eventually yielded grudging compliance. Nathan, surprisingly, became a more engaged father once freed from my parents' influence. Without the pressure to serve as their surrogate son, he focused more on building genuine relationships with both children, including Madison, whom he had previously sidelined in favor of Ethan. 1 year after the anniversary party that had revealed so much, Madison and I sat on the porch of our new home, watching the sunset and reflecting on our journey. "Do you think Grandpa and Grandma will ever really change?" she asked. I considered the question carefully. People rarely change fundamentally, especially at their age. But they can learn to behave differently when given no alternative. I still don't understand why they did it. They have more money than they could ever spend. Why try to take yours? It was never really about the money, I explained. It was about control. About punishing me for making choices they didn't approve of, divorcing Nathan, pursuing my career, raising you to be independent. Madison nodded thoughtfully. I'm glad we fought back. We wouldn't have one without you, I told her, filled with pride and gratitude. Your perception, your courage in gathering evidence, your willingness to stand up for what was right. You saved us, Madison. She smiled, embarrassed by the praise. I just paid attention. That's exactly what they didn't expect any of us to do. I squeezed her hand. The most valuable lesson from all of this is to trust your instincts. When something feels wrong, it usually is, even if everyone around you acts like it's normal. As we sat in comfortable silence, I reflected on how this painful chapter had ultimately liberated us. For years, I had measured my worth through my parents' approval and Nathan's validation. Now I recognized my own strength, my children's resilience, and the power of chosen family bonds like the renewed connection with Samantha. The inheritance I fought to protect was important, but the true legacy I wanted for Madison and Ethan was the courage to define their own worth, independent of others' expectations or manipulation. Looking at my daughter, perceptive, principled, and brave, I knew that legacy was already taking root. What do you think was the most important thing you learned from all this? I asked her. Madison considered the question seriously. That family isn't just about blood or names. It's about who actually shows up for you, who tells you the truth even when it's hard. As darkness fell around us, I thought about how often we miss the truth that's right before our eyes, how easily we dismiss the perceptions of those we should trust most. My daughter had seen what I couldn't, or wouldn't, see, and her clarity had saved us both. I want to thank you for listening to my story today. It's not easy to admit how blind I was to manipulation from my own family, but sharing this might help someone else recognize warning signs I missed. Has anyone in your life ever noticed red flags you overlooked? Or have you been the one to spot trouble others couldn't see? Please share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that trusting their instincts is the right thing to do. Remember, sometimes the most important truth comes from those we least expect, and the bravest thing we can do is listen.